Money laundering. Money laundering basically means hiding the real source of origin of money, which is illegal and diverts into other businesses which make it appear like legal. So money laundering is making the money, the black money, into white money, as they call it, and the money launderer can easily do so by transferring monies online using fake IPs and hiding practices and to avoid the trail. So in India we have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act which applies, and RBI has provided rules to maintain the records of all the payment transactions, and even their wire transfers are documented, and the transactions are routed through banks. So everything is allows an audit, and everything is accounted for. Now cyber stalking, that's a term which is basically to harass someone. It is to say the digital footprints are taken in, and somebody is trying to embarrass another person, can post any information on a blog or a website or an email or an SMS. And younger generation, we also see a new term called sexting, which means to share information which may be of an obscene nature among children or even adults. And that's something which is of concern, because if a message is very obscene in nature, publishing or transmitting it may amount to a crime under the IT Act, which is publishing of obscene information under 67 of the IT Act. It might even amount to cyber stalking if the person receiving it is harassed by the message. So therefore cyber stalking and sexting and cyber pornography, all these sections could also get invoked in a particular case depending on the facts. And in certain cases, spamming could be involved, fake blog could be involved, or identity theft may be involved. These are the cases where somebody is trying to harass another person by putting insulting comments, or it could be of such nature as well, which will be defamatory. So these cases are covered by section 66A of the IT Act, and a complaint can be filed under this section as well, and it could be coupled with section 509 of the IPC, which talks about outraging the modesty of a woman. And recently there have been cases of cyber stalking. There have been reported cases, but the Unknown versus Jawaharlal Nehru University, lately in 2013, the High Court of Delhi dismissed an appeal which challenged an order passed by the single judge of the High Court, where the appellant had challenged the punitive measure of compulsory retirement which was imposed on this appellant because he was found guilty of sexual harassment. The High Court was it was held that there was no perversity in the order passed by the inquiry committee, and that was upheld even later. So he was guilty of cyber stalking and harassment to the complainant. The next issue which emerges here is the computer forgery. The new emerging cyber crimes also include as a figment the computer forgery, because very easily printers, scanners and software could be used to alter the real information or documents which are authentic. And a lot of sections come into play, like sections 463 of IPC, which provides punishment for making false documents or false electronic records and cause damage to the persons, which could cause a person to give away property or execute a contract in order to defraud, and so that this fraud may be committed. The cyber criminals very often use such devices to commit computer related forgeries. Therefore it's important to keep very strong passwords and encryptions on their systems to avoid any intrusions, unauthorized access or even forgeries. In the Abdul Karim Telgi scam case, for instance, the accused used the counterfeiting of stamp papers and postage stamps, and the police seized the counterfeit share certificates for almost 34.47 crores. In the Parliament attack case, similarly, the accused created fake identity passes using his laptop and computer, and the forgery could also include data diddling, adding of little amounts of money or other information to a particular a particular database, or causing a salami attack, adding of charges, for example unauthorized charges onto certain database, which amounts to illegal forgeries and illegal intrusions into systems or even data. In a salami attack, usually a customer could be even charged small amounts which would go unnoticed, and section 463 makes this an offence which is punishable with imprisonment of up to 2 years or fine or both. And section 66 of the IT Act also would apply to this offence, giving a punishment of about 3 years and up to 3 years and fine or both. Okay, the next issue with or the problem of e-crimes is the cyber terrorism, and I think it's by far the most important one which any country would face. Cyber wars, terrorism and riots, this is something which is causing a big concern world over, and the use of computers or internet to create a havoc or a terror among the critical computers or the network infrastructure of a country is something which this addresses. And if there is intrusion into unauthorized intrusions into the computer systems of a nation, which may lead to stealing away of sensitive information, or illegal attacks which may lead to riots or damage of a public utility service, these are acts which will be covered by the cyber terrorism section, which is section 66F of the IT Act. Now this prohibits cyber terrorism and punishes it with the most stringent punishment of imprisonment up to life. And the cyber terrorists, they could even hack, as we say, a plane's system by remote means, and these days law enforcement is using the systems for robotics, or the law enforcement is looking at exploring drones, use of drones to curb riots and other problems, which is a step in the right direction. But in order to avoid problems, it is the right use. But if a cyber criminal uses such gadgets or mechanisms in order to create a havoc in a country, it amounts to cyber terrorism. The cyber criminals often use malware, viruses to disrupt the country's defense systems. And in Estonia, way back in 2007, it was witnessed where a lot of hackers hacked the critical infrastructure of that particular country, and the critical infrastructure is such that even India is very careful on that, because we have the nodal agency, which is CERT-in, that is responsible for detecting the security threats and deploying the incident response mechanisms to combat these attacks. In a recent incident, we also noticed that the website of the CBI itself was hacked. It was reported to be hacked by Pakistani cyber criminals. This is as reported in the news. So we have to combat these problems, and in order to do so, these provisions are very important. But the implementation also depends on a lot of other factors, such as the training in the law enforcement and the availability of the right equipment and the right manpower to deal with it. Now in US also we see cyber armies or cyber provisions which help and assist the government in keeping a tighter surveillance and a stricter security regime. So is in the case of UK, where the Parliament has passed the Terrorism Act in 2000 after the September 11 attacks, and the Proceeds of Crime Act and Serious Organized Crime Agency was set up in 2006. Now, in the case of the section 66F, it is mainly divided into two parts. The first part mainly deals with somebody trying to threaten the sovereignty, integrity or security of the nation, causing a denial of service access and destruction of property or service, public service. The next area of the next provision is about the person who knowingly or intentionally penetrates or accesses a computer resource without the authorization or exceeds the authorization granted, which is gaining the access and then stealing away sensitive information of that nation and using it to its detriment. So that is something which is again punishable. It covers a lot of things. Those information could be used to injure the interest of sovereignty of India, friendly relations with other states, public order, decency, morality, or defamation, incitement to an offence. Such aspects have been covered by section 66F of the IT Act. And a person who is a cyber terrorist, who is a cyber terrorist, could even be punished with imprisonment of life. That is something which is a non-bailable offence as well. Now, India is not a signatory to the Cybercrime Convention, although it has signed the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. And as we see today, the way of working of the whole convention is such that since we don't have a cybercrime convention, the same provisions may not be effective enough to deal with cybercrime cases as they would deal with other general crime cases. Therefore, a more effective mechanism is required to be dealt with in cases of cybercrime in particular. Now, when we talk about hate speech, for example, now hate speech is a term which connotes writing or posting on the internet, which is aimed at intimidating or harassing a person or a group or defaming him or her, and it is written with a special prejudice or a bias towards a gender or a community, and it could be political, it could be class based. And in India, Article 19(2) of the Constitution allows reasonable restrictions on this right to freedom of speech and expression. We do have this right to freedom of speech in India, but then we have reasonable restrictions in order to protect our nation's sovereignty and security, and therefore the government can place restrictions in light of this fact, and for this purposes notified under Article 19(2) of the Constitution. Section 66A of the IT Act provides punishment for sending any offensive messages through communication devices or computers. Any person who sends any information which is harassing to someone or intimidating or causing any injury or hatred or ill will, that amounts to a hate speech, and which is punishable offense under this particular section with imprisonment of up to 3 years and fine. In many cases, we've seen this provision has been invoked, and in certain dowry cases or dowry prohibition cases or other cases of where this particular intimidation has been used. Electronic evidence can be used of such SMSs or emails and produced in the court of law to prove how hate speech was actually sent using computers. And this is very rampant today, and the form of electronic evidence which is printed out of a particular screenshot could also be produced in evidence and proven to support one's case.